Shalom Aleichem. It's a few days, several days before the Yom HaKodesh, the Yom HaIlula of Rabbeinu, of our Holy Rebbe. So I'd like to farbrengen a little bit with you. Rabbi Herson, Rabbi Moshe Herson, who's in charge of the yeshiva, the Maristan Yeshiva and the Shluchim in New Jersey, told us once at a farbrengen when I was a bacher there in yeshiva, that Rabbi Chadikov, the Rebbe's secretary, closest secretary, Rabbi Chadikov told him that by the Rebbe, his calendar is from Yud Shvat to Yud Shvat. By many people, it's from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. By others, it's from Pesach to Pesach. In the secular world, it's from January to December 31st. And by others, it's tax season, tax time. By our Rebbe, his calendar, his year began Yud Shvat and ended the following Yud Shvat. So I think based on that, we could say that for us, Chassidim of the Rebbe, our calendar should be from Gimmel Tammuz to Gimmel Tammuz. Meaning on Gimmel Tammuz, the upcoming Gimmel Tammuz, we make hachlotas tovas, good resolutions, iskashos, connecting to the tzaddik, to the Rebbe, hachlotas bepoil in actuality, not just fantasy hachlotas, ones that make sense, ones that you could break through, and ones that give you the koyach and the energy for all year. And those last till the upcoming Gimmel Tammuz. So I'll begin with a few stories, but the stories aren't just another story, another miracle story. My mashpia Rabbi Yoel Khan, when he would say a maisa, it was a maisa with a hira, a maisa with a lesson, a maisa with a direction, a maisa with a purpose. It wasn't just another miracle story, which again, there's time for that and there's importance to it. And as the Rebbe, wrote to the Frierdiker Rebbe, I believe in 1932, encouraging him to share such things, although it wasn't something that in Chabad they really emphasized over the centuries. But nevertheless, the Rebbe felt that it was important for the generations and for the time, at the time in Europe when there was a great assimilation, etc. How much more so today, the idea of telling Tzipuri Tzadikim, stories of Tzadikim that are more of the miraculous nature, has its place. But nevertheless, for Gimmel Tammuz, when it's a day of reflection, a day of, it's a serious day, it's not a day to waste. The opportunities are great, and it's only 24 hours, although there's always the 3 days before and the 3 days after, and you can always be mashlim, but nevertheless, the energy and the koyach is on Gimmel Tammuz, the strongest. The Rebbe lived on New York Avenue on President Street, the corner building over there, before he moved to his house, I believe in 1956 or so, 55, 56, when they purchased their home there. A couple, a frum couple, moved in on the floor below the Rebbe, in the apartment below. Right on top was the Rebbe's apartment, the Rebbe and the Rebbe's apartment. And a few days go by, and he settles in, and he hears at night noise coming from a radio, and the noise is going on and on and on. And he says to himself, I guess the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbetzin are listening to the radio, but it's already late at night, 10, 11, 12, whatever it was, 1, it was for hours, and I can't fall asleep. And I don't know what to do to bring it to the attention of my neighbors. Lubavitcher Rebbe, a big tzaddik, just started his leadership of Chabad in 1950-51. Well, let me try again. And he tries again, falling asleep another few nights, and he can't because there's noise from the radio. So he decides, Ein la breira, he has no choice, and he goes up to the apartment. The Rebbetzin opens the door, and she says, I'm sorry to tell you this, but I can't fall asleep at night. There's noise from a radio going on for hours into the wee hours of the night. So she says, that's not my department, that's my husband's. He's in the dining room here. Please speak to him. So now he's really
I'm going to speak to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He was hoping that he could settle this thing with the Rebbetzin, and he doesn't have to bring it to the attention of the Rebbe. But the Rebbetzin tells him, it's not my issue, it's his. Go speak to him. And she points him to the dining room. Well, he goes to the dining room. He sees the Rebbe there, and he sees a big Gemara in front of him, and he sees him learning out loud, Amar Abaye, and he's teaching up in Yiddish, Abaye gesagt, and he's saying the words, and he's learning, and he's talking to himself, and he's going on. He sees the person, he says, Shalom Aleichem, how can I help you? He says, you've already helped me, you've already settled. I have nothing more to say. He thought that it was the radio. It wasn't the radio, it was the Rebbe learning for hours into the night, Gemara, and upteaching and saying it in Yiddish and upteaching every word and saying it loud and saying it with a geschmack. That's the way you're supposed to learn a piece of Gemara. The story that I heard just this week from someone who heard it from the person whose relative lived there tells us a fascinating thing. Many things, but one thing is that when you learn Torah, you need to learn Torah v'dibarta bum. Say the words of Torah. The words of Torah are holy. And our Rebbe, when he learned Gemara, at least at that time, and I'm sure it was that way all of his life, he said the words out loud, he said them clear, maybe said it with a sing-song too, on that gelernt. So we, ourselves, when we learn, sometimes we sit on the couch and we say Chitas, we say Rambam, we learn Maimah, we learn a piece of Gemara, and it's silent. That's not V'dibarta Bam. So we talk about great achlotas for Gimmel Tammuz and Ibedrein the Welt. The first thing, let us ourselves start with learning out loud, teaching our children and grandchildren and mukuravim and people that we come in contact with to learn out loud and say the words out loud. That's a simple Hayra lesson. And if you're thinking, well, what's the connection to Gimmel Tammuz? That's Gimmel Tammuz. Gimmel Tammuz is Haysofa b'Torah mitzvahs, b'liman Torah, to increase your Torah mitzvahs and ma'asim tovim and good deeds, as the Rebbe writes in the letter to Yud Shvat for the Frierdiker Rebbe's Histalkus and Yom Elula, to do these things. Another story with another message. I was sitting by, a few years ago, Purim. I went in to see the Novominsker Rebbe because he was on the way, Purim on 48th Street, between 16th and 17th Avenue, and I was visiting different people. I decided I'll go in there too, to say I've got Yom Tiv, whatever. So when I come up, he asked me who I am, and I tell him, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, sitting next to him was a cousin of his. His name, I don't know his first name, but the last name was Perlau. Perlau. And he sees the Lubavitcher, and the Novominsker was already talking to me a little bit about the Lubavitch, the Rebbe, and then I was talking to him about Rabbi Hutner and the Rebbe because I was writing about that. Anyway, so this cousin says to me, I want to tell you a story. We lived in Crown Heights, and it was sometime in the early 50s, 54, 53, 55, one of those years. And my father, I was a little boy, a young boy, or a bacharel, and my father was walking with me, and we met Lubavitcher Rebbe in the street. And they knew each other, and they greeted each other, and they said Shalom Aleichem, Avortahin, Avortahed, they said something. And then I heard the way the Rebbe asked my father, so where's your son going for camp? So he said he's going to this and this camp. There were several camps, Camp Nesifta, Camp Morris, Chaim Berlin had a camp, Torah Vodas had a camp. There were several frum camps that were already in existence at that time. So the Rebbe said, very nice, very nice. And the Rebbe said, was wird sein mit Chol of Yisrael?
And what'll be with Cholav Yisrael? Meaning, if I understand it correctly, that they weren't so careful in having Cholav Yisrael for the children, or all the children. I don't know he didn't say the details. I don't know the details as far as who did have, who didn't have, or there was no Cholav Yisrael. The implication was there was an issue with Cholav Yisrael at the camp, and it was very difficult to get at the time. So they didn't have Cholav Yisrael. So the Rebbe looked at the father, and he said to him, and he, with a great smile and delight, he said, "Bald wird sein a camp, was dorten wird man nur trinken Cholav Yisrael." Soon there'll be a camp where one will only drink Cholav Yisrael, milk supervised by a Jew. The process and the production is supervised by a Jew. That's called Cholav Yisrael. That will be the only type of dairy in the camp. That's the story that he told me from the early 50s. And shortly thereafter, that year, the year after, Camp Gan Yisrael opened up. And here, this short story points to the minhagim, the customs. Before we spoke about learning, now the story is demonstrative of a minhag, a custom. Our Rebbe taught us the importance of minhagim. Now, what do I mean that he taught us the importance of minhagim? I don't want to go into a historical lesson now here, but within Lubavitch, within Chabad, and other groups, Minhagi Yisrael, Jewish customs, was not an emphasis. Whether it was because we were under pressure and in Russia and in Poland, all the difficult times, and we didn't have time to focus and to think. But the bottom line is that from the Rebbe's Nesius, and even earlier, we see clearly such an emphasis on minhagim. And everyone knows the famous Sicha Rebbe, why we say in the four kashas of Pesach, why we say matbilin, the immersion question of dipping before matzah, why we eat matzah as others do, and the Rebbe explains it's because that's a minhag, and that will alert the child more than the obligatory issue of matzah, because matzah and bread he sees throughout the year, so it's not so different. He has a question, but it's still something within his realm. But the idea of matbilin, he doesn't see at all. Karpas, what's going on? Matbilin, So the Rebbe says that's why you say it first, because you want to keep the attention and get the child involved in the Seder. So the most unusual causes the greatest alertness and awareness and inquisitiveness. The story with the Cholav Yisrael, and today we need chizuk. Indeed, chizuk. We need to talk about it. It's like, in Lubavitch, in Chabad, and Tovshin Page, I talk about Cholav Yisrael. Yes, people are buying, let's say, at Starbucks, they're buying drinks. How careful are you with the production of the items? Is there a flavor of Cholav Akum? And so in other products. In other words, Cholav Yisrael, I'm going to drink a milkshake that's not Cholav Yisrael. That's an obvious non-Cholav Yisrael product. But what about something that maybe is, maybe isn't, and you take the lenient side and the easy way out? In the early 50s, the Rebbe wrote and spoke to Mrs. Kazin, Olav Hashalom, and to Rabbi Lipa Shapiro about implementing Cholav Yisrael in Cleveland and in the Telz Yeshiva. The Heilige Telz Yeshiva, it seems like, didn't have a Cholav Yisrael. And again, it's like in the camps in the Catskills in the 50s, they didn't have Cholav Yisrael either. It was very hard to get. So they relied on the het that you don't need it. And the Rebbe didn't accept that, and he pushed that it should not just be a Lubavitcher thing. Work with the establishment of Telz and the Vada Rabbonim of the city to bring Cholav Yisrael into the Telz Frum community. All the entire community, including the Frum community. Minhagim, Jewish customs. And a minhag has the same oisius as Gehenim. So this is not a Gimmel Tammuz Farbrengen, this is more of a Musar word, but it's brought in Svarim that through doing minhag, customs, you avoid purgatory, Gehenim. So that's a side benefit. That's, okay. I mean, that's not the way Chassidim and Chassidus would put that as an emphasis. But at the same time, it's good to have in your pocket. It's all right. To avoid a little more of Gehenim is nicht the extra Zach. It's not the worst thing. But what we're emphasizing is the importance of minhag. So the Rebbe told Mr. Perlau, he told him, bald wird sein a camp, was dort wird nur haben Cholav Yisrael. There soon will be a camp, there'll be a camp, well there will be only Cholav Yisrael. And finally, the third story was told to me by a Yid in himself. It was 1957. His parents were still in Eretz Yisrael. He came to America and he heard about the Rebbe and he went for Yechidus to the Rebbe. Before he went into Yechidus, the door was a little opened and he saw someone coming out. And it was a Hungarian Jew, a Jew from Hungary or so. And the Rebbe gave him a bracha and he heard the Jew saying to the Rebbe, "Soll der Eibishter helfen, soll der Eibishter helfen. May God help." And then the Rebbe said, after he said those words, "Der Eibishter helft nit, tut aus." God doesn't just help, or God doesn't help. He does everything. The Yid told me that he heard these words as the other person was exiting the Yechidus room and he was about to go in. And he said it to me, he said he will never forget those words. And I met him, probably he was already in his 70s when he told me this. And this is the issue of Emunah and Betochen. And especially now, Gimmel Tammuz, it's the day when we reflect on the avodah of our holy Rebbe. And it's not that the Rebbe passed away 26 years ago, and we do his directives. And Azay, yes, there was a Stalkus 26 years ago, and we say Kaddish, and we light on the Neshama, and we follow the Minhagim, and we give tzedakah to the Meisters. All the Minhagim that the Rebbe wrote for the Frierdiker Rebbe follow for him as well. But by our Rebbe, he is alive in the sense of he is our Rebbe Heint today, not yesterday, but today. Emunah and Betochen, the Eibishter tut aus, that means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was the one who decided on Gimmel Tammuz 26 years ago to return the Rebbe's Neshama to the Eibishter. That's what he wanted. Go fight with him. Go argue with him. As we say in good old European Yiddish, so that the good nicht helfen. It won't help you at all. None of us then. What's the purpose? The purpose is to see, as the Rebbe said himself, tut aus was ihr kennt zu bringen Mashiach. And I'm leaving it up to you. Do whatever you can to bring Mashiach, and I'm leaving it up to you. 42 years, 44 years, I've been nurturing you and nourishing you and carrying you. And I continue to do that. But now, you need to initiate it. You need to be my long hands, my long arms, my long feet, my mouth, my cup. So, when a Yid and a Chasidim of the Rebbe in particular makes a achlot on Gimmel Tammuz to do something, and to do something that's maybe difficult, and that last year they couldn't do it and they tried and they failed, and he makes a achlot again that he's going to do it, and he's going to do it with these kashrus to the Eibishter, through the Rebbe. The Rebbe gives him today koyach habolataya messiahnly. The Gemara says, you come to purify yourself from heaven, they help you. Habalit Tayr, someone who wants to be more pure and more connected and more doing Torah, Minhagim, and Emunah, Messiah lay, the Eibishter through the Rebbe helps the Lubavitcher Chassid and the Yid Bechlal. Because the Rebbe was a Welt's Rebbe. The Rebbe wasn't just my Rebbe, our Rebbe, Lubavitcher Chassid's Rebbe. He is a Welt's Rebbe, the world's Rebbe. And he still is the world's Rebbe. I overheard the other day here in the Skol Yeshul how he says, one Chassid says to another, he says, that the Kum Millionen mention. Millions of people of all kinds come there. Now, he was exaggerating, millions. I'm sure it's over millions already now. But, I mean to say, the way he said it was like a little exaggeration. But the point was correct. What's the point? That the doors are open there for everybody. This is the Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. The Rebbe's oil is the Reb Shimon Bar Yochai of our time. Kipshutai. And even now with the corona and the restrictions, Baruch Hashem, it's becoming less and less, and the doors were always open. Doesn't mean to say you can hang out and drink a cup and Farbrengen, okay. So those things is nicht right now. But the Iker, don't lose sight of the Iker is to be by the Tzion, to say a few words. If you can't make it to the oil, send a pan with someone, or be mitzayer, the tzura of the Rebbe. And the point is to learn his Torah and to do his Torah, meaning the Torah that he taught, which is so voluminous in the Igros Kodesh, in the Likutei Sichos, in the Maimorim, in so many things. Mamash geoinus, genius. And then there is the idea of knowing that what was the Rebbe's drive and mission. Bias HaMashiach B'Poel, the coming of Mashiach in actuality, not in fantasy mode, but in reality mode. And every one of us, if it comes this Gimmel Tammuz, will make achlata to do another Ma'aseh Tov, another good act of Torah mitzvahs and Amunah Minhagim, will be another step closer to Bias Mashiach, and we won't be worried. It's not our issue. Well, it's 26 years, and what happened? The Rebbe said, and that Zukazakt. My friend, look at yourself first. Look at the things that was too Zukazakt, what you promised. Are you fulfilling what you said? Let the Rebbe and the Eibishter make their chashbonos. We have to just ad mosai continue demanding Mashiach and more so doing things of Avas Yisrael, Poshet, really caring and not steching other people and not putting down other people, not belittling other people who have a different approach than us, but truly mean it. Harbe shluchim lemokim v'harbe drachim lemokim. There are many shluchim and there are many paths, and a real shliach and a real Eved Hashem and a real chassid not only tolerates, not only accepts, but embraces the path of another Jew. There's more that can be said, but I don't want to make this clip too long. The Rebbe should help that the schus of unser heilige Rebbe, Gimmel Tammuz, is the Yom HaYelula. And we know that a Yom HaYelula is a day which is the oir, the energy of the person, the tzaddik, illuminates the world. There's illumination. Just open your eyes, you'll see the illumination. And when it's illuminated, there's opportunities for health, for parnasa, for good shidduchim, for happiness, for shalom bayis, for everything. Well, the Eibishter helfen that all of this should happen through Bias Mashiach Tzidkenu, Rabbeinu B'Roshenu, the Rebbe, our leader, because there's no one better than our Rebbe to be the Mashiach. So Zayin B'Korev Mamish, Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh, Binyan Beis HaMikdash, Amen v'Amen, L'chaim U'Levracha, to every one of us.